The world is on the cusp of a new era of mobility that is redefining the way people move around. Autonomous driving is becoming a reality. This progress raises profound questions. How will autonomous driving change safety? How can it expand access to mobility for people who have previously been excluded? What does it mean for the design of our cities and for the allocation of responsibility in the event of accidents? The 13th Allianz Motor Day addresses these questions today.
A very warm welcome to the 13th Motor Allianz Day here in Ismaning. We are so delighted to welcome an international audience from all over the world, journalists and experts here in Ismaning and also via the live stream. Our topic today is the safety promise of autonomous driving. And 4 years ago, we already talked about automation, but back then it was much of theory. So today we would have a look, level 4, what's the state of the art? And also, as we see, it's becoming reality. It's becoming reality in test fields, in pilot projects, in cities like Munich, Oslo, and Singapore. And that's why we don't talk anymore only about technology. We have and we need to talk about trust. We have to talk about safety, inclusion, and collaboration. And beside me is Christian Dr. Saar. He is head of Allianz Center for Technology, and you're our host today.
Yeah, a very warm welcome from me. Also great to have you here in Ismaning at ACT, the Allianz Center for Technology, the company which has a goal to create mobility in a safe, sustainable, and affordable manner.
And you are doing research since many years at the intersection of safety and technology. So when we look at level 4, what have been the biggest changes in the last few years?
Yeah, the biggest change is the maturity of that technology. So that changed a lot, and I'm extremely excited to see how rapidly this disrupting technology is evolving over the last years. And so we are beyond the research phase. So we are now in the phase where the vehicles are hitting the road in test fields. And from a researcher's point of view, it's a really interesting phase because we can now collect data, collect experience in a technology with new opportunities and risks which we can assess.
And we have so many benefits, and people clearly see the benefits, but current studies shows that a lot of people don't fully trust in the technology. So would you, like this lady in our film, be so relaxed reading a book while driving autonomous?
Personally?
Yes.
No.
Why?
Because I'm an automotive engineer, I'm so curious and so excited to see the technology working, and I would constantly look how the vehicle behaves and how the technology works and handles all these situations and how well it handles the situation. So personally, no, but from trust point of view, I would say yes. Because I experienced so many vehicles in the past months and saw how well they behave. And so from trust point of view, maybe not at the first ride, but after some rides, I would really trust it. I would gain trust and then trying to do anything else, yes.
Thank you so much for hosting us today. Thank you for setting the stage, and I'm looking forward to our deep dive later. Christian Saar. Yes, trust is important. It's a no-brainer. Of course, trust is important. But the question is, trust in autonomous driving, is it more important than in human driving? And if so, why? What are the real challenges, and what do we need to make a real progress in Europe? I am curious, I'm very excited about the answers in our next talk because it's the opening speech about the global evolution of autonomous mobility and its implications for road safety and insurance. And it's by Dr. Klaus-Peter Röhler, board member Allianz SE, responsible for insurance German-speaking countries, Central Europe, and global property and casualty. And a big applause, stage is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome so many partners, journalists and experts here to the AZT, the Allianz Center for Technology in Ismaning. And to those joining us online, thank you for being also part of this very important discussion about the future of autonomous mobility. Yeah, just 4 years ago, during our last Motor Day, focusing on autonomous driving, such vehicles were still confined largely to labs, to test tracks. Indeed, real-world deployment felt like a distant prospect. That has changed. Today, autonomy is no longer a vision, it is becoming part of our transportation landscape. Mercedes-Benz and BMW have achieved regulatory approval for Level 3 vehicles across Europe, enabling hands-free driving under defined conditions. And Level 4 vehicles, those capable of full self-driving without human input within geofenced zones, are also being piloted. Many know that Baidu and Waymo are running L4 robotaxis on public roads in China and the US, but few realize Volkswagen is also testing autonomous ride-hailing fields in Singapore, Oslo, and Germany. Now, Allianz is already ensuring these pilots and test fields in Singapore, Oslo, and Germany, helping to turn these prototypes into safe real-world services. And this is only the beginning. Now, autonomous driving is accelerating from concept to reality, and it reshapes how we move and how we ensure mobility. And today I want to explore 4 critical questions with you. First, what does the large-scale deployment of Level 3 and 4 vehicles mean for safety, inclusion, and sustainability? Second, how must insurance respond to a new and complex liability landscape? And third, how are we evolving, modeling, pricing products to ensure that the safety impact of autonomous vehicles go hand in hand with the affordability of premiums? And finally, what coordinated actions must automakers, insurers, policymakers take to ensure that autonomous mobility in Europe is safe, scalable, and trusted? At Allianz, we see AVs as a technology leap with enormous potential for safety improvements. Globally, over 1.2 million lives are lost in road accidents every year, nearly 20,000 in the EU alone. Most of these are caused by human errors, distraction, fatigue, misjudgment. Autonomous systems, by design, don't suffer from these flaws. The AZT reviewed more than 50 international publications, scientific studies, and accident data sets, focusing on SAE Level 3 and Level 4. Across these studies, the picture is consistent. Autonomous systems outperform human drivers in key accident categories and could eliminate the majority of the most severe collision types. For example, automated systems can reduce rear-end collision, lane departures, and intersection errors by up to 85%. A simulation analysis of reconstructed fatal crashes in Arizona indicated that if a Waymo driver, it's a highly automated system, had replaced human drivers, 82% of the accidents could have been avoided and another 10% mitigated in severity. In fact, much of the evidence comes from controlled US pilots or realized tests in well-mapped urban routes. Conditions in today's mixed traffic realities, they differ. And that's why we ran a European reality check using our own claims data. The focus was two frequent accident types: low-speed reversing and rear-end collisions in moving traffic. That's where there are assistance systems, such as automated emergency braking, AEB. They should matter, and we see they do matter. Now, for reversing accidents, the effect is stark. One car manufacturer that had rear and AEB standards since 2018 cut reverse parking by almost 2/3. A second one that kept it optional saw only a smaller drop of around 30%. And models without the function show virtually no improvement. Now, rear-end collisions tell a very similar story. Across compact class vehicles, Allianz data reveals a 30% decline in rear-end crashes for the newest models versus those from a decade earlier. The scale of improvement depends clearly on how early and how broadly AEB was rolled out. Some models show only single-digit declines, while others achieve reductions of up to 46%. And taking mixed traffic into account, the Allianz Center for Technology projects a 20% reduction in vehicle-to-vehicle collisions in Europe by 2035 and more than 50% by 2060. Now, for Allianz, this argues for broad and standardized implementation of driver assistance systems. The conclusion: make effective assistance standard and safety gains follow immediately. Make it optional and the impacts will stay modest. But safety represents just one benefit. AVs also promise to democratize mobility and deliver potential significant environmental advantages. Picture a future where your teenager returns safely from practice without needing a lift, where rural residents can access vehicles more easily, where your elderly parent reaches medical care independently. Imagine autonomous electric delivery fleets with real-time route optimization. They glide quietly through the cities, reducing noise, cutting emissions, and easing congestions. That is the world Allianz is working to ensure. And as a leading motor insurer, we are committed to drive a transition to AVs, which is managed with care, clarity, and collaboration. Still, for this to materialize, it was said in the beginning, one element is essential: trust. Not just in the technology, but in how it is governed, how data is managed, and how accountability is designed and accounted when something is going wrong. Allianz surveyed more than 8,000 people across Europe to assess public trust in autonomous vehicles. The results show cautious curiosity. 55% believe AVs can be as safe as human drivers, with 38% seeing them as safer. Now, views differ across countries. Italians are most optimistic, with 65% believing AVs are as safe or safer than human-driven cars. Germans and Austrians a bit more vary, while only 44% of the British express similar confidence. Yet familiarity with autonomous driving remains low. A third of Europeans say they are not at all familiar with the technology, and only a minority have tried systems beyond level 2. What is clear is that across Europe, trust hinges less on perfection and more on proof. People not only want that autonomous vehicles match or exceed human safety, they want this backed by transparent data, strict oversight, and clear accountability. And the pivotal question remains, when no human is in control, who carries liability? As vehicles become more autonomous, we are entering uncharted legal territory. For over a century, insurance has assigned liability to the human driver, to be more precisely, the vehicle's owner. But what happens when no human is actively driving? Consider this real-world scenario. A level 4 robotaxi approaches an intersection on a rainy evening. A pedestrian steps into the crossing just as the light turns red. Simultaneously, a human-driven car hydroplanes the path of the robotaxi. The AV must react, brake and risk to hit the pedestrian, or swerve to avoid them. It swerves but collides with the oncoming vehicle. No one is hurt, but who carries the responsibility for this damage? Was the algorithm calibrated correctly? Did the sensors function properly, or were they dirty, obstructed, or rain-soaked? And was there human negligence, for example, an inattentive driver in the human-driven car, or by the pedestrian? Now, with AVs in a mixed traffic scenario, the clarification of cause becomes exponentially more complex. Imagine a severely injured pedestrian having to prove a product defect to pursue legal action against the manufacturer. Impossible. While manufacturers and their product liability insurers bear initial responsibility for their product, actual liability could rest with the vehicle owner, with the manufacturer, with the software developer, all three. We don't know that. Increasingly, it may also involve remote supervisors, sensor providers, or integrators. Now, no victim should face this growing web of liability alone. Mixed control accidents demand for an independent actor. One that can determine root causes, protect victims, and coordinate remedies. Now, Allianz's position is very clear. Victim protection must remain central to AV insurance. Liability must stay with the vehicle owner, no matter who or what is in control, and motor insurance must remain the first contact for victims and as the independent assessor that entangles human negligence from technical failure. Why insurers? Over a decade, we have built trusted claims handling, forensic investigation skills, and neutral data access across manufacturers, software providers, and sensor suppliers. And that experience makes us uniquely placed to run objective root cause analysis, secure evidence, allocate liability fairly, and pay promptly. At Allianz, our role goes beyond simply compensating innocent traffic victims quickly and fairly. We also help clarify how accidents occurred, allowing us to seek manufacturer recourse when needed, and more importantly, contribute to addressing systematic technical issues to help overall safety. Naturally, we also consider whether insurance premiums should be adjusted for the specific vehicle types. Higher risk vehicles will continue attracting higher premiums, creating meaningful incentives for manufacturers to improve system safety and performance, an outcome we fully support. The shift to autonomous mobility is not just a legal change and challenge. It's a strategic opportunity. As AV systems become more advanced and widespread, the frequency of the traditional accidents should decline. However, damage will still occur, and when accidents do happen, costs are likely to be higher than today, with cameras and sensors now integrated into bumpers, mirrors, and other components. Repairs are becoming significantly more expensive. We will also continue to see physical damage claims from events like hail and theft. Plus potentially new types of claims emerging, such as those related to cyber and to systems malfunctioning. Generally, few accidents mean fewer claims, and a stronger safety record will be fairly reflected in premium levels. Good news for our customers. AV will also transform how we assess and price risk. While traditional vehicle classifications based on historical claims frequency remain relevant, but their importance will gradually decline as we emphasize driver assistance system safety performance. We are evolving our price models by complementing existing type classification with safety scoring models that reflect how the vehicle and its systems contribute to the overall risk. And this will ensure a more accurate and forward-looking approach to premium setting. At a time when consumers face rising living costs, the message bears emphasizing autonomy can deliver both safety and affordability of motor insurance. And that is why we continue to develop our products based on real-world driving performance, strengthening our commitment to data-driven pricing. Choosing autonomy should not feel expensive. It should feel like the safer and economically smarter choice. At Allianz, we are actively shaping the future of autonomous mobility. Though early-stage collaboration with commercial AV operators and tech partners, Allianz is co-developing the insurance standards that will govern future mobility. And these standards will meet existing legal requirements while adapting to future technology and regulation, treating technical failures like human error, while preserving victim protection and providing clear and direct compensation. We are piloting innovative insurance solutions for driverless buses and AV test fields in several markets. However, there will be no one-size-fits-all solution across all core motor insurance markets. Legal systems differ, particularly regarding liability, as do mobility models. But one principle must remain constant. Insurance must deliver clarity, compensation, and trust, especially in a world of allocated accountability. Autonomous mobility is no longer a question if. It is about how fast, how fair, and how safe. Yet, while the existing regulation EU 221426 sets out procedures for approving automated driving systems, national implementation remains fragmented. Automakers therefore face inconsistent requirements across market, for instance, in the types of tests and in the inspections that must be conducted. We at Allianz continue to place strong trust in reliability and diligence of European manufacturers. However, to maintain their global competitiveness, it is crucial in this field to have a harmonized regulatory framework. And from Allianz perspective, 3 priorities must be implemented without delay. First, Europe needs harmonized technical type approval and testing procedures for autonomous vehicles approval across all member states, effectively creating a European uniform testing approach for autonomous vehicles. Let's call it a driving license for autonomous vehicles and their systems. This would simplify market access, enhance safety assurance, and accelerate innovation. Second, Europe must have uniform standards to access safety and accident data. The European Commission's proposal on vehicle data sharing under the EU Data Act provides an important foundation. Allianz believes that data sharing use cases should be assessed in terms of both benefits and costs. For accident and safety relevant vehicle data, the benefits are very clear. A framework developed jointly by insurers, by manufacturers and regulators would improve road safety, strengthen public trust, and accelerate importance of autonomous mobility. Insurers could, for instance, contribute hotspot data on high-risk scenarios and accidents, while manufacturers could share system performance data. Our aim is a framework that helps European manufacturers to lead on safety. Finally, there must be a European shared database of critical traffic situations that vehicles must handle. This must cover all accidents in autonomous mode and near misses when accidents could be narrowly avoided. Manufacturers can use this data to simulate and validate system performance. It would also underpin the idea for European driving license for autonomous vehicles. Europe now faces a strategic choice to make autonomy safe, scalable, and trusted. It must establish a harmonized regulatory framework, ensure sovereignty over critical data, and develop a European driving licenses model for autonomous car and their systems. By advancing these measures, European regulation can not only strengthen the competitiveness of the continent's automakers, but also lay the foundation for a more equitable, safer, and more sustainability and mobility ecosystem. In conclusion, the path to autonomous driving is not simply a technological shift. It is, at its heart, a social contract, a shared responsibility to build safer and more inclusive mobility. Every step towards this means fewer collisions, fewer victims, and greater mobility for millions. But it's not just a race for innovation. It is a test of responsibility. At Allianz, we see our role clearly. We are not only insuring vehicles, we are ensuring trust. Together with our Center for Technology, we will keep working with manufacturers, regulators, and technology partners to turn trust in safety and accountability that are measurable, verifiable, and transparent. Because only through a shared effort can we turn progress into protection and innovation into impact. Allianz stands ready with expertise, partnership, and conviction to help drive this future. A future where autonomy will be the reality, but safety will always remain in human hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for highlighting all those benefits, also from a scientific perspective, but also we understand that people don't trust what they don't know. It's a lack of knowledge. It's also a lack of information and data. But if we just imagine ourselves, what are the questions that really matters? Matters on my own journey to experience autonomous driving. What are my questions? What the questions are that I have? Let's find out. We move now from a strategy perspective to customer experience, and we welcome Frank Sommerfeld, CEO, Allianz Versicherungs AG, and Dr. Luzi Backer, member of the board, Allianz Versicherungs AG, with their topic, Trust in Tech and Safer Travel, the future mobile life of an Allianz customer. Big applause, stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Klaus-Peter already touched on almost every important aspect of the future of autonomous driving. We will look a little bit closer from an Allianz customer perspective, and we look through the different stages of her life. She's now 6 years old, so she was born 2019. We decided, she was AI generated, so we decided we call her Emma because that's the most common name 2019 in Europe. So we will go through the life of Emma and see how that will actually change over the course of her lifetime. 6 years old now, so what does it mean in autonomous driving? You have a daughter similar age, would you put her in an autonomous vehicle, Lucy?
It's a huge question. So my daughter is not Emma, but now I pretend my daughter is Emma. But still, I mean, it is a big question. When does autonomous driving come into our lives? But also, when is driving coming into the life of a person anyways? No? Does it start with a driver's license at 18 or 17 years old, or does it start earlier? And from my strong belief, this is much, much earlier, especially in the future with all the possibilities of autonomous driving. We see this beautiful car here from Markus Zwick. It's a so-called last mile car, and we'll talk a little bit about it. So now let's picture Emma, and I want to send my little girl to visit her grandparents, my parents, in the countryside. So now there's an autonomous car picking her up, driving her there, and potentially also bringing her back. It's a big question. Would I do it? Would I now do it today? Would I entrust the system, the insurance, my daughter to handle this car? I'm not very sure. What about yourself, Frank?
Yeah, probably a little bit more. My son, at least, he's 19 years old, he could probably intervene. So that would make a difference if you say, okay, if there's something happening, he can actually grab the steering wheel and do some adjustments to it. But let's look what the public in Europe and Germany in particular are saying to this. We did that study that Klaus-Peter already mentioned in 7 different countries, and there were very, very mixed feelings from, oh, this is very, very dangerous, to, wow, this is innovative and game-changing in the future. But you can see very, very undecided, from negative to very negative, and only 38% actually see that as a good and positive way going forward. Where does that actually come from? And if we look into the media, I mean, there's 1.2 million fatalities every year in traffic worldwide. There's 20,000 fatalities in Europe alone. But is there the one fatality coming from an autonomous vehicle? It gets all over the news, and with in particular some of the headlines, but then it kills your grandmother. That looks a little bit like the alien is coming and is trying to kill you, and that's what makes the perception of the people probably a little bit unsure about these new technology. 81% of the respondents actually says they want to intervene at all times. Similar than I was saying, okay, my son can intervene, then I feel more safe about that than with the little daughter of Lucy's to saying, I don't want to put it in a car. People actually think that are more likely to accept a human error than one coming from a machine. There's a study in Pennsylvania that actually asked the people about the prediction that leads to a monetary incentive. And before, 2/3 said, I want to have the machine doing my prediction. 1/3 said, I want to have the human. Then they saw the performance, and the performance of the machine actually was better, but when they saw the machine doing a mistake, they said, okay, I'm off it, because they probably don't think it can learn. And only 1/3 finally said, okay, I'm trusting the machine to do the predictions, even if they could gain more monetary incentives by choosing that machine. That is probably something, considering in the human behavior, which is very important. And 37% in that study actually say, we want that machine to prevent 100% of all accidents, which is not possible at all. I mean, if you look at a deer probably jumping from the woods suddenly on the street, no car, no technology on earth can prevent that accident from happening. So, but that's what our survey actually came up with. That's where probably even the headlines say, okay, if there's an error, if there's a fatality, we don't trust that, and that's why the trust needs to come in. We see from studies that actually the system can learn and is improving significantly. From 2015 to 2022, 50 times better than the 7 years before. So we can see the system can learn. Still, people don't believe they can trust that system going forward. If we look at that huge improvement, probably the perception of the people still stays a little bit behind, and that we see when we look at the actual risk that Klaus-Peter already mentioned, Waymo preventing 92% of the injuries from happening, and still 62% of our people that we asked actually say, no, we think autonomous is not there. It's still not as good as the human behavior. So how do we create that credibility on autonomous driving, Lucy?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you just mentioned it. We could, as an insurer, put incentives and then, make people buy in. But as I just said, I'm a mom, and I learned that, it's not so good if you force people to do something, but to actually get the buy-in because they trust in it, because they accept it inherently. And in order to do so, I think we really need to invest much more in working together with manufacturers, with researchers, but with all the stakeholders involved, and get people to understand what is happening. This is a lot about communication. It's a lot about transparency, really putting the figures into their place, but also experiencing and seeing what it does. You see it here. I mean, you will be able to have a look at in your car and also similar cars. It's not a coincidence that they actually look a little bit like our usual cars, no? So there's a driver's seat there. We don't actually need it, but it gives us a better feeling if we see a driver's seat there, and if someone is sitting on the seat, it even gives us an even better feeling to do so. So, but still, we need to put this on a database and really work with transparency and put numbers behind. Because across countries, 70% of the people say that from their point of view, technology for autonomous driving is not yet mature. We know it's not true, but in this round of people, obviously, but the people, 70% still believe it's not mature yet. 43% of the people express the need for long-term safety records. So they wouldn't say, it's okay if I see this happening, but they want over years and years, decades, to see that the machines are actually okay, that they are delivering the 100% and not making mistakes. We wouldn't accept this for humans. 2/3 of the people have concerns about how autonomous vehicles will behave in unpredictable situations. You just said the example about the deer coming into the street, but of course there's many other unpredictable situations. However, like if we really look into our bottom of our heart and think, sometimes I have a better day, when I drive, and I am more faster in reactions, and sometimes I don't, because you're a little tired, or you worked a lot, or you have something on your mind. We talked about things that are really taking your concentration off the street. This obviously doesn't happen to machines, because they can't get disturbed here. So more transparency, communication, but also experience will really help us build the trust, and education as well, I believe.
Education as well, yeah. And I'm a little bit older than you, so I still remember when the airbag came out, there were similar discussions about that. Like, doesn't the airbag create more serious injuries than not having it? Today, no one actually thinks about that anymore, and probably need to do the same with autonomous driving. We need to educate, to promote, and also to test drive it and make it, to feel it really. When I have a car that actually does the line and the speed management itself, and it works perfectly in slow traffic on the motorway. It doesn't work on small streets where cars are driving on the side and it suddenly brakes and so on. But get the feeling about what works and what doesn't work will make a difference to the feeling about the safety in an autonomous car. Similar than everyone accepts that airbag actually saves your life, you will actually get the same feeling for autonomous driving. It will make it better if the combination now of human beings and technology is used correctly. And if we look at the data that Klaus-Peter has already mentioned, so 90% of all accidents are caused by human error, so only 10% by technology or maybe a deer jumping on the street. If we go forward and look into what's happening in the next 10 years, then we will reduce this by 20%. Going forward until 2060, we will even reduce that by 50%. So there is safety coming by technology, and I think we need to understand that. So Emma is getting older, and she wants to drive. So what's she doing?
Super expensive. We need to actually pay for the driver's license. So some hope on the horizon. No, does Emma actually need a driver's license when she's 17? A big question. I believe, yes, it's only 11 years away because she's 6 years today, no? So it's only 11 years, so the development will come, but I would suggest to her to do the driver's license because you most probably have both the autonomous cars but also the old-fashioned cars in the streets. Also probably becoming a luxury sports nice thingy to do, no? Like drive the car. We just heard Christian who said, you know, he will always have a look at the car because he's so into it. So I believe Emma is my daughter, so she will be interested in technology. So I will recommend her to take the driver's license, but she will have to pay herself. No, just kidding. But we are also, of course, as Allianz, we are actually calling for a driver's license for the autonomous vehicle. So the autonomous vehicle also will have to, you know, get involved in all these situations, not just the standard situations, but also the unpredictable situations, and fulfill all the requirements you will have to have in the streets, no, obviously. So the requirements for level 4 that are already regulated in EU's law, so we all have it at hand already, we just need to implement it and really put it into the law. But then we also need to make sure that we have the infrastructure and the possibility and the environment in order to be able to measure and see and really test all manufacturers in the world and give them the same standards as a basis for a proper database so that we can say this is safe, this is not safe, this is a proper EU driver's license or it isn't in the EU but also beyond. So this means we need to have simulations of large numbers, like thousands of situations based on uniform databases. We need practical tests under the identical situations and conditions on test tracks, for example, and then we will also, of course, need the data for practical tests in normal road traffic and realistic conditions and see how that happens. This is the practical driver's license part, no? In order to be really able to say, okay, this is a car we accept in the street, and then also the people can perceive this as safe and proper, and then we can also talk about it as an insurance. One important point here is we need to, and Klaus-Peter Röhler talked about this, we need to make sure that this is also done in the EU. So we have only few entrepreneurs, like Markus Zwick is one, staying in Europe and really saying, you know, I'm going into the battle, but I choose my words wisely here. It is a battle. It is a big battle for entrepreneurs like Markus to say, I'm staying in Germany and in the EU. I develop cars like this, and I go through all these difficult bureaucratic systems that then will eventually lead to success. Now, there's two sides to this. The one side is, yes, it's very good that we are strengthening safety and we are on the secure part of the side, no? But it also means it's a much longer way to go, and it's probably taking more time and more difficulties and much more money to go into it. So now he told me, you know, I would actually need a team of, how many people did you say? 10 people who go through all the regulations and just sit there, a team that is only doing regulations and requirements. This would be surreal, no? Because we need Markus and his team to actually develop technology and move on this development. So let's make sure we find a proper way, a good balance between these two things, and make sure that we don't lose our location in Germany and the EU.
Yeah, so now Emma has a driving license. I know what that means because my 16-year-old is trying to do her driver's license just right now. It's an onerous process in Germany, I can say, and she can't afford it herself, that's for sure. But now let's look at, now she has a driver's license and she wants to buy a car. A used car, so let's say a build 2025, and you think about road safety. That's in particular very important for 18-year-olds because it's the by far highest death cause for 18-year-old in Europe. And in particular for male, 35% of all 18-year-old males die in traffic. So we want to make sure they are safe when we buy our car. So we look at the safety features of the car and how it actually impacts the safety of the traveling of Emma and my son and my daughter. So parking and maneuvering is 50% of our motor claims at Allianz in Germany, and in the German insurance industry, it is related to 4.5 billion worth of claims cost. 70% of them is in the rear, 30% in the front or at the sides. In Germany, there's a regulation that since 2022, the front has to do emergency braking automatic. So if we look at the impact of that, and Klaus-Peter mentioned it already, if we look at the two different 2012 to 2014 compared to 2021 to 2024, 30% decrease in claims frequency. So that's already a huge impact. But if we look at the rear version of that emergency braking, it even is a much more stunning improvement on safety if you have it. We put it here on that graph, 66% if it is installed regularly in the car. If it's just optional, then it's somewhere in the middle, and if it isn't installed, it still has the same frequency than it has in the past. So it makes a huge difference, but there's no regulation for the rear. So that's what we actually consider the government to do, put some regulation in place. But there's also difference in the security systems. So Volkswagen and BMW, for example, they're not just having a rear system, they also have it for the flanks. And that makes a huge difference compared to, say, Volvo and Ford, that they only have it in the rear. And probably most surprising it that Tesla that don't have a rear at all. I mean, usually people think there's the most sophisticated systems. They only do what's required. They only have the front systems. So they wouldn't avoid that kind of accidents going forward. So we need to make sure that these requirements are set in place, rear accidents, and that the system actually makes a huge difference when you decide to buy a car going forward. But do we still need insurance going forward?
Absolutely. You are talking, Frank, you are talking about your daughter and your son who need the specific requirements, but obviously it's also a lot about inclusion, no? I mean, if we look at the elderly people, like my parents, for example, driving a car, it's most of the time people who actually drive older cars. And unfortunately, these systems and equipments are not installed in the older cars. So we have this assistance, but we need to make sure that it's also included. So we have more mobility also for elderly people, but also in difficult situations. So now our Emma needs an insurance because she wants to drive with her autonomous vehicle. And what does that mean for us? I mean, I'm head of claims, so I'm super happy about 50% less claims due to autonomous vehicles. Unfortunately, the claims, and Klaus-Peter said it, they will become a little bit more expensive, or actually quite more expensive, because of the technology that is in the cars, obviously. So it's a give and take. But the most important point is, I mean, on this side it's money, on this side it's actually accidents and including bodily injury that is being reduced. So this is a super positive development. What does that mean for us as an insurance company? Do we want to insure these cars? Well, of course we want to. And we will also really invest into it and see how this develops. What needs to change? I mean, it's a whole lot of different questions that come into our mind. We talk now about, how does the product look like? What is liability like? How do we deal with subrogation? What is the model that we need to look into? Risk calculations will be different because we will not have the historical data that we are normally taking into account. We have AI systems that are continuously learning, so they will not stay stable. The development will accelerate significantly. We will have damage due to hardware changes, for example. What do we do with this? Like, it's a whole complete different world. We will have claims notified by the car. So it's not the usual way anymore how we do this, the process, and how it's all normally thought about in insurance. So we will ask all these questions and see how we work with it. But the one bottom line message is, for our customers, basically, we will treat the autonomous driver as a normal driver, obviously. No? So we will make sure that insurance is also possible there, and we will have to look into account also what is happening with the cars. And make, obviously, insurance compulsory also for autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, and what about the risk assessment and the pricing? It will change as well. Today we look into type of vehicle, the region where people are driving, age of the driver, and these will still be playing a part into the risk assessment, but we will need a little bit more about what's actually happening behind the technology. And we need the AI model, so what kind of AI was actually driving the car, and we need the number of sensors, the cameras, and things like that to improve that going forward. In particular, not just where accidents happening, but also where were the near misses, where almost an accident has occurred, because that also tells us a lot about the risk going forward. What do we need for this? First of all, we definitely need from the car the safety-related data to understand how actually the machine is working at any given time. And we obviously need the accident data to understand what actually happened, and was it the human driving or was it the machine driving going forward. But what we can deliver as well is also understanding of road safeties. Where are actually machines having trouble to find their way through the roads and causing accidents? Where are the black spots on the map where we can actually help to improve road safety also going forward, and help the technology to learn and to evolve? That's something we can definitely do going forward.
So now Emma is grown up. We are in the year of 2059, and you see it here. She has an accident. She didn't realize she's having an accident because she was sipping coffee, having a chat with her own family, her kids in the autonomous car with her. So, they just talked. It's funny how we put her here. No, she's still sitting in a driver's seat. I'm not sure whether this is happening in 59, but let's picture this because it's easier for our brain. Huh? So she's sipping coffee, chatting with her family. She has an accident because she drives into the car in front of her. So we have a classic car accident. Luckily, no one injured, but Of course, now the big question is whose guilt was it? Like, how is it happening? La la la. We have all the questions on liability, and normally this claims process, of course, in Allianz is fantastic, but it still takes some time because you need to talk to the police. You will have to get a statement. Flooby-dooby-doo, months go into the country, and we have another insurance from the other car involved. So it's taking some time until we settle the claim. Of course, this is now already much improved, and we have a very smooth process, and it's all going well. But you also know Allianz stands for security. No, we say we secure your future. This is Allianz slogan, and this is what we will want to care for also in the future, also in 59. So what is going to be different in this case? Emma and her family will sit in the car. I strongly believe we will have much, much better data on how the liability is really split, no? Because you have all these sensors, you probably have some videos, you have all the data. People who were here last year on your key, no, car key, you remember how we had a nice view on, or a shocking view on what is all stored on your car key. So we will have much, much better information on how the liability question is actually going to be resolved. And then you also have one new phenomenon, I just said it. The car is probably going to give us all the information also on the point of accident. So the car, it's not Emma who will open an app and say, I want to file my claim, but what is going to happen is that the car reports to us and we will immediately settle the claim and go with the process like this. So this is really level 4 car insurance.
So now Emma is turning even older. We are in the year 2099. Emma turned 80, had a very beautiful, successful life, had her own family, and but she has problems driving herself, and she wants to remain mobility. And a study from Eurostat says that the proportion of people above 65 will increase from 2022 of just over 20% to 32% to 32.5% by 2100. And 21% of these people will have problems using mobility. And this is where autonomous can play a huge role in making mobility available to those people. I just can refer to my mother. She's 85 years old, lives in a nursing home 100 kilometers far from us, and we want to bring her to a family event. It's quite difficult to just go there, pick her up and drive her, and then afterwards bringing her back. That's 400 kilometers that you need to drive just for a coffee and cake is sometimes quite difficult. With autonomous driving, that can actually change significantly because she can go there with her autonomous vehicle herself, and this is probably something that will change significantly going forward. So what will the situation be in 2099? Is probably no mixed traffic anymore. So almost every car will be level 5. There will be probably a few old-timers still around. People love them, and they probably have some regulated space where they can still drive, but most of it will be definitely autonomous. Will there still be casualties on the road? Will there be a vision zero where there will be no accidents at all and no death on traffic? I don't believe that's possible, but we will getting there a lot closer. And thinking now you would be in 2099, would you then put your daughter into the autonomous vehicle to drive them to your grandparents?
Absolutely. 2019, yeah, definitely. I would probably already consider it now, I have to admit, because I do believe it is a good technology and we know it's happening.
Yeah, when it's tested.
When it's tested.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really a brilliant storytelling with a customer experience and makes it much more understandable. And I'm sure there will be more questions to you. And I'll invite you to keep them in mind for later, because we will have a big Q&A session after the panel. And also you have the chance to write it in the chat, so we take it online too. Let me take a short moment. What I have learned so far: first, technology is ready. There is no doubt. Technology is safer than human driving. There's no rational doubt. Also, the insurance product is ready. And probably premium will be cheaper for customers. But we still have the lack of data. We still have a lack of standardization and regulation. And what we still need is trust. How do we build trust? We build trust by knowledge, and we build trust by experience. And that's our next step now. We will have a live demo here. So I ask you, Christian, to come on stage, because you will guide through the demonstration. Maybe you can tell us a little bit which use cases we will see.
Yeah, thank you. Use cases is the right keyword for now. So we will have here 4 use cases which we would like to show you. And as you know, there are different regions in the world. So we have US, we have China, we have Europe, and all these regions are slightly different. And in US, from use case point of view, they are focusing more on ride-hailing, so the taxi use case. In China, they are focusing on that ride-hailing, but also on private use for private passenger cars. And in Europe, we are more focusing on ride-pooling. So it's an add-on on private transport. And we see the greatest benefit in Europe for society in that use case. Very interesting, and will change and improve private transport a lot.
Exciting. Let's start.
Yeah, let's start. And I would like to have Markus Zwick on stage. We are starting with Inyo. Nice to have you here, Markus, the founder and CEO of Inyo. And we have a strategic partnership with you to create the methods for data exchange, but also the test field in Munich, or in Grafing, nearby Munich. So please introduce us to your use case.
So thanks for having me on stage. Thank you for the introduction. Already a lot was mentioned already. I mean, largest insurance company in the world, and sort of the smallest cab manufacturer, I mean in Bavaria, I don't know worldwide. So the application might make sense. It's about first last mile. What do? We like to bridge the gap, the gap in the existing public transport area. I mean, what we do is we take you from your door and taking you to your place you like to go to. It could be the supermarket, could be the doctor, could be, I mean, worst case, to work and also back home. I mean, but we have, with this size of vehicle, numerous applications. Could be that we support traveling in small islands, for example. Could be hotel areas, industrial areas, where an average sort of 1 to 2 people will be transported. That is sustainable because our vehicle, I mean, that is the advantage of the size. In production, it will use less resources, but also in operation, it will be using less resources. Because imagine in average, you will need 30% of the energy for the transportation. That is just for the vehicle. So if you have sort of these famous 2-ton vehicles or even more, I mean, imagine the 10-ton bus and having only 2 people in for the moment, the driver and the passenger. Here you will have a vehicle just weighing 600 to 700 kilogram totally, and that makes us more sustainable and more flexible as well. In very, very short words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Markus. It's just a short kind of elevator pitch. So we will have a guided tour afterwards where everybody of you can ask questions in more detail, so you have enough time with all these use cases. And so, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we now go further on with another use case, ride pooling, and which is Moja. And we will go outside, and please welcome the CEO of Moja, Sascha Meyer. So, Sascha, you're pretty much experienced in elevator pitches, so yeah, please introduce to us your vehicle and your use case.
Yeah, what you see here is our ID. Buzz AD, and the ID. Buzz AD is Volkswagen's first serial production autonomous vehicle that will hit European and US roads in 2027. Now, this vehicle is not only self-driving, it's also supported by our AD ecosystem. So we build all the necessary software that you need to provide safe and scalable trips in Europe and the United States. Furthermore, what we provide with this vehicle is access to public transport operators in Europe and the United States to be able to provide shared rides. Why do we want shared rides? It's pretty obvious we want to reduce congestion and improve the use of resources. What is important? We have a tremendous scarcity in drivers. And to overcome this, we need the autonomous vehicles. With the autonomous vehicles, we will see scalable transport system, and we will be able to reach the people that currently don't want or can't use public transport because it's just not in their region and they don't have access to shared mobility. With autonomous vehicles, we will be able to provide rides wherever they are needed, be it in rural areas, be it in city centers, and combine people on their trips in one vehicle to reduce traffic on the road.
Great, great, thank you so much. And we will have you later on the stage. We're happy to have you here. And
Great.
So now we are moving on to Momenta AI, this direction where Dennis Grames is waiting for us. So Dennis, welcome.
Thanks. Nice to meet
Great
you.
to have you here, and same to you. Please introduce your use case and your vehicle to us.
Great. Thank you. Hi, welcome, and thank you for having us here at Allianz Motor Day. I'm Dennis Grames. I'm a business development director at Momenta in Europe, and I'd like to introduce Momenta to you. Momenta is a leading technology company for intelligent driving, and we develop active safety systems, we develop assisted and autonomous driving and parking solutions that makes the lives of people on the road easier, safer, and more comfortable. Our mission is better AI, better life. We want to improve people's lives with breakthrough AI technology. And for us, better AI, better life, it's not just a slogan. We have concrete goals. We want to save 1 million lives with our technology within 10 years by drastically reducing traffic accidents on the roads. And our data from China shows this. It underscores the potential. Vehicles with our system in IM Motor cars, they have an 85% reduction in traffic accidents per kilometer. And we are very eager to also bring all of our cutting-edge features to the European market once the regulatory frameworks allow. Momenta has, from the very beginning, pursued a development approach which we think is the only way to develop scalable and safe autonomous driving. First, by using fully data-driven systems deployed to hundreds of thousands of vehicles, of mass-produced vehicles, where each kilometer of driving helps master millions of complex driving scenarios. And second, by having the same platforms and core technologies in L2+ and L4 systems. Our L4 systems, they build on this common foundation, and they incorporate the software and hardware redundancies needed to satisfy the safety and regulatory requirements. And Our L4 system is already in operation in Shanghai, China, for example, deployed in 5 pilot zones, which will transition to fully driverless by the end of this year. In global markets, we partner with Uber. And next year in Munich, we will start testing our L4 robotaxi operations. And we combine Uber's network with our fully AI-driven technology approach to provide safe, scalable, and efficient robotaxi services to users. I invite you later to also join us here at our booth, and thank you for having us.
Great, fantastic. Thank you for that pitch, and I personally experienced your vehicle and it was impressive.
Great.
So thank you for being here. So we move on to Iventim. So Clemens,
Yeah, Clemens.
great to have you here.
Yes.
And kindly introduce your use case. It's teleoperation, so a little bit different. So kindly introduce your use case to us.
Yes, teleoperation. I think teleoperation is an additional supplemental use case, belongs to autonomous drive. In case a service operator has to access the car for some reasons, you know, there is a technical problem, or there is a deficiency in driving, you know, or a driver has a problem or an issue. A teleoperation allows, you know, a remote driver to take over operations, to hook on the car, and to remote control the vehicle from a remote workplace. And this allows a lot of functionality with respect to getting the car out of a difficult traffic environment. So sometimes we have a deadlock situation, for example. Yeah, who is driving first? Who might drive first? If a EV computer has to resolve the problem, the question might be not resolvable. But in case a remote operation service operator hooks onto the car, jumps in, resolves the problem. If there is a technical issue on the vehicle, some malfunction of something, you know, like in our ordinary life, driving a vehicle, a remote operator can jump into the car and solve the problem. And if we are talking about, and inside, you know, we were also attending at the presentation about elderly people. Somebody is not feeling very well. He can alert the remote operator and ask for some assistance. So that's what remote and teleoperated driving means. Here we have our remote workplace. It's, I think, the workplace like in a regular car. We have the steering wheel, we have the acceleration, the brake. Here, instead of the windshield, we have a monitor, and this monitor in the remote driver's working place, is connected to the vehicle here, the i3. And one of the examples here, if I'm moving the steering wheel, you can here see very clearly the movement of the wheels. And the same would be true if, you know, later we ask you to drive the car, yeah, to have a few meters here on your ground, yeah, your yard here. Christian, anything else you'd like to add for our vehicle?
I would perhaps show briefly on here how to drive with our teleoperator technology. So we are ready to go ahead. So I'll hand over the microphone to Ashwin, and we'll have the first tryout here directly live. So Ashwin is moving now the car. the car is detecting also with AI other cars and other people, with additional functionality that we can work on, like emergency stop assistant functions and other detection features built in.
Great, great. Thank you for that demonstration. As I said, we will have a guided tour afterwards, so you can demonstrate a lot more and we will all experience a lot more. And now we want to discuss all that. We want to discuss the use cases, we want to discuss the social benefits, but also the hurdles and about regulation and liability issues. So let's get back on stage and start the panel discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Big applause. Thank you so much for this demonstration. It's impressive. Honestly, I would rather trust any of these cases than get ever in a roller coaster. That's for me totally sure. But now let's set it in a bigger picture we want to discuss now, and we want to bring in more perspectives from providers, from society, and also from politics in our following panel discussion with the topic autonomous driving in Europe, safety, inclusion, economy, and trust. Please welcome all our experts on the stage with a big applause. Welcome on stage, Sascha Meyer. Okay, yes, welcome. Thank you for having here. And I will introduce you very short. Beside me, Verena Bentele, world para-athlete, Paralympic champion and world champion in biathlon and cross-country skiing. She's here today as a private person, bringing in the social perspective. Beside Dr. Christian Saar, you already know him, head of Allianz Center for Technology. Also Susan Saal-Poyner, global head of mobility, Allianz Partners. Sascha Meyer, CEO of Moja GmbH. And as well, virtual training, Maria Cristina Galassi, European Commission DG Team Leader AVs and Safety. Big applause again for our experts. Yes, and dear audience and journalists, now is the time also for your questions. We will have the time for a big Q&A later, so please keep your questions in mind or you put it in the chat, so we will take all. Christian, we have seen some of the benefits from a research perspective. I would have the interest, where do you see the biggest safety gains? And what's still missing to prove them to everyone, so everyone is convinced?
Yeah, as we mentioned, safety is a shared social responsibility, and safety is the biggest promise autonomous vehicles can bring into the world. So, as mentioned in the presentations and in the speech, 90% of all accidents are caused by human errors, and that technology is really able to erase all these errors caused by driver distraction or misjudgment and similar reasons. So, as we mentioned, as we already see, autonomous acting systems are really able to reduce claims frequency. So, as mentioned, this rear AEB reduces claims frequency by 66%. So we see the potential, and if you imagine, if in a system or a system consisting of all these autonomous acting systems in one whole system, how big the potential is that we can achieve. But missing is the deployment. We need to see all these vehicles in test fields in a larger scale. And we need to stop investing in smaller research projects. As we said, we are beyond the research phase. We don't need to invest in 1 to 5 vehicle test fields. We need to invest in larger scale test fields where we all can experience that technology and that we can gain data, experience, just drive kilometers and kilometers to get all the data we need to prove that that technology is delivering what we are expecting, safety.
We will talk about these topics later on also. Verena Benteler, let me ask you, because you come from a different angle. What is your state of the trust in autonomous driving, and where do you see the potential for society?
Yeah, perhaps Emma and me would be the first two girls sitting in that autonomous driving car, perhaps in some years. So I come from the German countryside, from the Lake of Constance, a beautiful surrounding there, but no underground or other public transport system. So when I visit my family on the six houses village, then I have to ask somebody picking me up. And so for me, as a person who is born blind, autonomous driving would be a very, very more self-determined living and a very big possibility, for example, driving with my skis to the mountain or something. So for me, the possibility would be a very interesting for people who are elder, having no driver's license or are not willing to drive themselves, for kids, for persons with disability. That kind of autonomous driving would be a very, very new perspective for self-determined living and for having independent possibilities for having more mobility in their lives. And so when I was younger, perhaps some of you in my age or some a little bit older, you know Knight Rider perhaps, and so the car kit, I don't know if we want to have a car who's speaking to us. I'm not very sure of that point, but the car with a turbo boost, if you have a high traffic situation, or a car who's able to drive themselves in an autonomous way, that would be a very interesting thing, who is not more just kind of a vision that can be possible. And that's for me the very interesting thing. How can we give people a new vision of how driving can feel or what driving can be if you can read or work in the car and use your time by doing other things. Perhaps that is the vision we need to make more people familiar with, that imagination of having an autonomous driving car. Perhaps for others it's not kit, it's some other perspective by working and driving at the same time.
Yes, I see. You're not only brave, you want to experience, and you want the possibility to experience for everyone. Susan Poyner, are other markets already more advanced in trust of the society? Because you've launched pilot projects across Europe and Asia. What unique insights you have to give us?
Yeah, so we saw some super interesting use cases here today, but indeed the regions, there's a very different dynamic to how they approach autonomous driving. So in the US, for example, it's far more investment-led. So even though there's like a general guidelines, it's very much up to the states. So this has developed these commercial cases around robotaxis in the Bay Area, for example, far earlier than we're seeing now in Europe. China, very much a national priority, so they've put a lot of focus and money also behind this, and this has moved out very quickly. And also here we have these local zones that allow a high scaling very quickly. So taking a robotaxi through Wuhan, etc., that's already happening today. In Germany, we heard this morning, in Europe, we're very much in the validation period, so safety first, compliance first, which makes sense, but we would really like to push this forward, adding more applied experience use cases.
Yes, it's always a discussion about that. We want regulation, we want to have safety, but maybe we stop innovation because of that. But what's your point of view as a provider? Because I ask ChatGPT, how much % of the European potential for autonomous driving is already in place? And the answer of ChatGPT is, in technology, around 80%, but when it comes to everyday operation and regulation, we are still only around 30%. Does it fit to your assessment?
I think the real question is, what is the market potential that we have tapped in? And I would give a very simple answer. It's around 0%, maybe 0.1. Because currently there is no sort of commercial deployment of autonomous vehicles in the European Union. What we see is that with the rise of the technology, and we all agree that in the United States, with the example of Waymo and other players in the Chinese market, we see that the technology is becoming ready for prime time. At the same time, we see cost reduction for sensors, for the compute in the vehicles. And on our example, we see that we will soon have the first production vehicles built for the requirements of the European Union with all the redundancy. And this brings together all the different building pieces together with the software stack that you need to run those kinds of vehicles in a large scale. But what is not yet there in the European Union is the market that demands those kind of vehicles. Obviously, we can go the route of robotaxis, that what we heard today in some of the use cases. Yes, you can earn some money there, but still it's comparably hard to tackle this market due to the heterogeneity of this European landscape. Then we lack the regulation standards to bring them into the European Union at the same level with the same validation processes. And we all would love to see those vehicles applied for the common good, provide access on the last mile, provide shared mobility, provide mobility where we can't build infrastructure as today.
Yeah.
But the real challenge is the public transport operators and authorities, they are not yet empowered. They don't have the financial resources to invest into this market. And that's something that we have to tackle in the European Union to create the momentum to bring more providers, more industry, and more aspects of the value chain into a European landscape.
And we have a truly expert from the European Commission here in our panel, Maria Cristina Galassi. We talked before, and you say the EU already has a framework, yeah? Yet implementation differs. So, but tell us again, how is the EU Commission supporting this progress, the needs of the companies and the markets?
Yes, first of all, good morning to everyone, and thank you again for inviting me to attend this event. So I apologize for not being able to be there in person, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute online. So indeed, we do have a regulatory framework since many years already. We started updating the type approval framework for access to the market of innovative technologies already in 2020 with a regulation at UN level for what we call conditional automation, so autonomous vehicles driving on the highway. And then we issued a European regulation for driverless vehicles that entered into force in 2022. So under some limitations, it's already possible since 2022 to type approve autonomous vehicles, driverless vehicles, and introduce them to the market. And then we are currently working on a next step forward to indeed move to a large number of vehicles introduced in our market. And this will be done mainly through a new UN regulation, so a regulation that will allow for global harmonization at United Nations level. And we expect to deliver it in a few weeks so that it can be adopted in June next year. So in a few months, it will be available also in Europe.
Where exactly? Where exactly?
Sorry?
Where exactly?
This regulation will be adopted by United Nations, if everything goes well, in June next year. This means it will enter into force in Europe after 6 months.
Okay.
So January 2027, we will have the possibility to approve large numbers of autonomous vehicles also in Europe. And this allows market introduction. Then what you mentioned is indeed, we do not have deployment, commercial deployment, as I also heard by the other panelists. We do not have deployment yet in Europe. So one factor for sure is the market is not there. Another factor is there is fragmentation at national level that is also a bit slowing down this process. So being aware of that, even this is not under the remit of the European Commission yet, we launched through the Automotive Action Plan significant flagship initiatives to tackle these aspects. So of course we have actions related to the regulatory framework that I just described, We have one long-term action about establishing a European single market for driving automation. And as this will take some years, this will take some time and a lot of effort to bridge the gap between the current situation and the future. We are also launching, with the support of member states, at least 3 test beds, large scale, where the deployment can happen, similarly to what's being done in US and China, and it was mentioned by the other experts.
Yeah, right at the moment, it's still the problem that each country follows its own rules, and there is this question if it's really possible to have a unit European business model. So how can you support more that it's binding? Because I see this is also what you need, because it differs a lot from country to country.
Well, yes, as said, a problem that we are all facing is what you mentioned. So member states are adapting their national frameworks, but independently. So the Commission has no responsibility, for example, for traffic rules or liability rules or licensing of public transport at city, regional or national level. But we are creating a platform for, indeed, member states to exchange. And this will be also facilitated by what I mentioned, the European large-scale cross-border test beds initiative. Because a part of this initiative will be to make sure that either we have a simplified sandbox that gives access to the testing, or member states can align their national frameworks and allow this facilitation for the technology to be deployed. Because we fully understand that our actors, our industry, cannot comply with like 27 different frameworks. And sometimes the difference is also at city level or regional level, which makes things even more difficult.
Yes, and you both especially have to deal with all the fragmentation. And I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit more, maybe with a concrete example, how your business daily life is touched by this problem.
I think for us, one of the biggest challenges that we have to overcome is to make sure that the integration of the whole system is in accordance to the specific requirements. With us seeing that the European market is not where we need it as an industry to even consider starting a production line or signing ordering sheets for parts, we need to even look at various markets. So that's why we focus on US and EU at the same time. So this in itself creates a lot of complexity when we build the system. Then furthermore, we follow the German law for the development of our autonomous vehicles and the ordinance for the development of the autonomous vehicles. And this gives us a lot of complexity and a lot of additional costs that others are not bearing. So as an example, we have to build and develop redundant brake system, redundant steering system, redundant power supply for these vehicles. And we think from an engineering standpoint, that's exactly the right thing to do. But we need to make sure that once we are now coming to the landing pad to provide this vehicle, that actually we are able to deploy it. And there are certain aspects like the small serial batch limitation of 1,500 vehicles in the EU, which we all know it's supposed to go away, but it's still there. And I'm talking about this for more than 3 years now, so it has to happen soon. Furthermore, in our validation, we need to validate the vehicle in each and every location. That's why we run test beds in Munich, we run them in Hamburg, in Berlin, in Oslo, Norway. So, and this is just the starting point, and we have no certainty that when we have reached certification in one area for the vehicle and the service area approval according to the German law, that we are able and allowed to drive on the next city border. So our vehicles need to return, an example of Hamburg, at the city border if that is beyond the agreed scope of service. And this obviously makes clear that their limitation and distraction of the market that limits us in our capability to really tell our investors, tell our shareholders, we believe in the European market, it's going to be a strong market and we can tackle it. Obviously, going into the US is a lot easier.
Yes. How do you experience the fragmentation, Christian?
Yeah, we experience exactly the same. We are working with these companies, also Markus Zwick and others. We experience how complex that is and how difficult it is to deploy these vehicles. And what we need is really to hurry up and to make common standards so that it will be easier. And without common standards for test fields and the homologation processes, there's a lack of comparability for us also as an insurer and a lack of transparency. And we need transparency also for building up trust. And that's so important. So we need to hurry up really in this sensitive safety-related area. And in our opinion, the driving license would be one way how to improve that. So we believe it's the best way, but it's one way. And
tell us more about that, the virtual driving license. It's an interesting and also it's an innovative idea.
Yeah, it's if you're within the automotive industry, it's not so uncommon that you have a simulation area and different testing fields. So what we believe in is you need a homologation process based on a simulation. So we need a common database, and it would be best to have one common database for all OEMs who are entering the market, which is the same and which consists of relevant situations, relevant and also critical situations. And then you go to the test track, as it's done also nowadays for safety-related crash tests and so on. And you do it the same with autonomous vehicles. And then you go into the real world and doing, as mentioned, the driving license for the vehicle in real-world conditions. So these 3 steps would really help us to establish a common standard for everybody and also building trust because it's a transparent system and you can see how safe vehicles really are.
What do you think? Would such a system help in practice?
I think what I like about this approach is the clear objective criteria to be able to drive with autonomous vehicles in a given region. One of the challenges with phrasing it as a driver license is to take care that we don't oversimplify this notion, because it implies you have a test of 1.5 hours, a little bit of theory, and then you're good to go after 2 weeks of training. And it would just be underestimating the complexity that is necessary. So if you look on what is required to drive safe on autonomous roads, the autonomous vehicle is one part. So for sure it needs to comply to road guidance, it needs to be able to deal with traffic situation, but then comes the safety of the passengers. So vehicles need to be equipped with the software stack, with the technology to make sure that passengers are safely buckled, that they are safe inside the vehicle, that even if they get sick, that they receive help. That's one important part. And furthermore, we need to consider the fleet control of those autonomous vehicles, because there are situations where just the complexity of driving in a real world will hit you, just as demonstration, road blockages, new traffic controls that you need to consider for your driving. And there you need to be able to have a software system that reacts to this kind of complexity. And so what we see is it's the right way to have a driver's license, but it's more than a driver license, it's a systems license. So you need to be able to prove that your system as a whole is safely integrated and able to deal with the complexity.
Would it help to you, Verena, to build trust, to know about such a virtual driving license?
Oh, a driving license for me would be a very new idea. So I think in the end, it's a very, very interesting decision we have to do as people here in Germany or in whole Europe or worldwide, if we are willing to give our trust in the technique and if we are willing to give the trust away from ourselves. Even, and I think it's not the point of interest if the autonomous driving cars are better than we are and can have more safety decisions as human beings can do. So I think in the end, what people need is a role model, is a kind of perhaps good experiences people can do and can have on a test track, for example, and can have the experience. How does it feel to, for example, sitting on the wheel and is possible to read the newspaper or something? How does it feel in a very difficult situation if the car is doing the right decision for you? I think if people have the possibility to make that experiences, perhaps that would change the mind of more people than at the moment. Perhaps at the moment, for a lot of people, it's very, very important to sit themselves on the wheel and do their decisions. I mean, so for example, if we decide in Germany, if we want to have a limit how fast you can drive, it's a very hard discussion in Germany. And for some people, it's very important to drive with the 200 kilometers across the street. So that if we're discussing on that point of view, I think autonomous driving is in a very, very far distance, not in the technique possibilities, even if in our mind.
I mean, she's a world skier champion. Of course, she has not so much fear and a lot of trust in herself. Christian, I would like to talk again about the lack of data, and you've called for a shared data foundation. And I mean, I am a host for tech since years, and the discussion about open data is one that's really an old one, and I don't see a lot of progress. What's the problem? Why it is so difficult? And maybe also we can share the opinion from your side, your perspective, and also again from politics to support this.
Yeah, many reasons. I mean, that's a topic since years for Allianz also.
Yes.
We are calling since years for a sector-specific regulation based on the EU Data Act. EU Data Act is a regulation which says the customer has a right to its own data he created, and but what's not regulated is a standard data set, how to access the data exactly, and how costly will that be. So it's not regulated. So we are calling for that specific regulation, sector-specific regulation, to make that clear. And in the moment, from our point of view, it's not all data, it's just some data. It's not all in-vehicle data. It's just the data we have an interest in, and different third parties may have different interests, but for us it's only safety-related data to assess the risk, and that's the point today. We need to build trust, so we need also to assess the safety, and it includes also accident data. But that's all. It's not every data, and we need also to protect customers from giving away all the data.
Yeah.
It's not the intention. It's the intention to regulate that clearly, which data is it exactly, and that's behind the sector-specific regulation. But unfortunately, in the moment, it's not a focus, because there are many concerns of parts of the automotive industry, because you need to regulate how to get access, that's a problem, and which data exactly. And from our point of view, we are talking about the same thing. Please, let's regulate it. But in the moment, it's more like, please do less regulation, and that's okay, but in that specific point, that regulation would really help us.
How is the need and the call for it in other markets? Can you tell us? What's their solution?
So data is very similar to the regulatory landscape that I talked about earlier. So in the US, again, whilst the fragmented landscape helps innovation, it's more complicated dealing then with different standards. China, again, very centralized. This is very complicated for us because there's no cross-border transfer. This is highly regulated under the national security laws. In Germany, we have a very prudent approach, which is good for the consumer. So it's very much around data security, around compliance. This makes progress is a bit slower, but at the other hand, it also allows to have a high consumer trust then in the product. And let's remember in the data discussion, it's a lot of benefits for the customer, right? So even today with connected car, for example, it increases affordability if you have a telematic product. We have preemptive maintenance products. So I think consumers know this, and it's just a question of handling this, which remains really the most difficult part.
I would agree to the notion that it's not about sharing all data. So like even technically this is not possible. We create petabytes of data each year with our testing fleet, and this is just around 120 vehicles right now worldwide. So this creates a notion that obviously it's not possible to provide access to each and everyone. And furthermore, it's our industry, I would say, secrets that we have and that are really necessary now with the rise of end-to-end AI system to train the models. So that's why would even say why would we want to share it. I think one important aspect is to create clear definition of safety relevant KPIs and share that. I don't want to repeat what Christian just said, but furthermore I think one very relevant aspect is to make sure that data doesn't leave the region, specifically for the training of models. So I hear that there are certain notions, yes, like, oh yes, this has been validated by our data protection officer that it's a safe approach to do so, and then the data is transmitted into other world regions for model training. And that's something where I would be very curious, because it's not only about our faces and our license plates, it's really about the whole infrastructure and all the information that is in the visual data and the proximity data by lidars and radars that we would transmit. So for us it's really important, and we see this in other world regions. China has been mentioned, the GCC region is moving into the same direction, that once you want to operate vehicles there, you need to prove that all the data is processed in local data centers, that the data does not leave the country, and therefore we need the infrastructure, we need the chip industry. So it's a huge task to build this cluster to be able to deal with it, but we need it because it's autonomous vehicles is just the beginning, because we see that the rise of physical or embodied AI starts with autonomous vehicles, but then it will go on to all different forms of robotic and smart infrastructure. So answer these questions right now from a European perspective is important. It will be even more important in the next years.
So everyone knows it's important, but we still see the solution comes not by itself, by the market. So it still seems to go on with a kind of conflict, and then the responsibility comes to politics. That's why I would like to ask you, Ms. Galassi, how can we encourage OEMs to share data, and who should collect and maintain data?
Well, first of all, I would like indeed to make reference to our EU regulation, and because also this approach, this new type approval approach that we introduced at European level is being used also at United Nations level. So it is already introduced in the so-called DCAS regulation, the regulation that is allowing type approval of more complex driver assistance systems compared to what were already approved under other regulations. And then also what will be the new regulation at United Nations level for automated driving systems. So we have a principle of in-service monitoring and reporting. What does it mean? It means that safety relevant data, as mentioned by Mr. Mayer, will be collected by the industry responsible, so the manufacturer or the operators responsible for the vehicle, and will have to be communicated to the authorities. And this will include accident data, as mentioned before, but also other safety occurrences that can be, for example, issues with the communication for the remote control center, or failures or malfunctioning. So we have a list of occurrences for which data must be communicated, and this will be not accessible to everyone, but the safety recommendations that will be derived will possibly be shared. Further to that, the Commission is also funding European research projects that are tasked in collecting data. And as we heard today, it is important to collect data to be able to identify those scenarios, so those situations with which the vehicle should be familiar and should react appropriately according to the regulatory requirements. So there are indeed projects at European level that are tasked with what exactly you mentioned. Then this will be the basis to build a common database. It will not be easy and quick to have one at European level, and so many of the questions that you mentioned, who will be responsible for that, how this will be managed, who will have access, this will have still to be processed and defined. But there are components of the puzzle to build this common approach that are being built. And I also would like to mention that indeed in the EU regulation, and the same also will be in the other regulation that I mentioned, we already have a concept really in line with what was mentioned by Mr. Saar for the driving license. So what also Mr. May mentioned, we are giving requirements on the technology, but also requirements on the behavior that is expected. So this means indeed the vehicle is being tested in trucks, so in confined environments, and then it's also being tested in real world. So this really will look like a driving license, more suitable for autonomous vehicles.
Where do you see the differences, Christian Saar?
We agree. From our point of view, it's really important to have always a use case behind and a business model behind. Otherwise, it's not okay to just share data. It must be regulated, it must be defined properly, and I think we are on the same page. So let's push forward that a little bit, because in the moment we are a little bit stuck.
We are running out of time, so there are so many topics we have to discuss, but I would like to focus a little bit short on competition again, because there is the question, is Europe's safety focus a strength or is it a handicap? Who thinks it's a strength and who thinks of you is a handicap? Stress question.
I would say it's a handicap. I work with OEMs and partnership business. I believe it's taking quite long. It's very restricted. So just as it's really important that we have the trust of the consumer, so we have to be prudent at the same time, but let's support progress as well.
Christian?
Yeah, for me, for sure, safety is always a strength.
Yes.
It's a seal of quality, more or less, and not an obstacle. But if we set safety and safety concerns too high, and do not see the maturity of the technology, we will not deploy it. So we need to balance that and to see safety as a seal, but then bring it to the street. And that's what we discussed. So regulation and complexity of regulations need to be adapted so that we can bring it on the street. We see the maturity. We see, I drove those vehicles, not me, the vehicle drove, but it's so impressive. So we need now to lower a little bit these levels of proof we need to do in the validation phase. We need to prove it on the road now. So it's a strength, but we need to adapt a little bit to bring it on the road.
I'm curious to hear Sascha Meyer.
I have the clear understanding that in the long run, it definitely will be a strength of the market. Right now, we have an uneven playing field to other world regions, and this creates, I would say, the slope that we currently see in the deployments. Why do I think it's a strength? On one side, if we see the self-certification process in the US, then current approach is to use existing OEM platforms and build or integrate the SDS system on top of that without having any reasonable chance as an SDS developer to prove that all the safety cases are met. Just assuming that there is no glitch in the core vehicle below it that might have negative impact for our perspective is not sufficient. So we think that the European approach of having a certified vehicle that then also requires the OEM to take the liability for the whole system safety is the right way to do to ensure that we will see long-term acceptance in the market. And that's, for us, it's the most important thing. We have a lot to lose as a European industry. We are in Europe, so we will be held responsible according to European laws, and we can't just stay away from Europe if we don't want to do vacation here anymore. So it's important for us to strengthen this and to keep the levels that we have defined now on the standards that are defined and go ahead and just wait and give the industry the chance to deliver and work on such initiatives as the driver license and having a value chain built in Europe.
Maria Cristina Galassi, I don't need to ask you because I know you see it as a strength of Europe. That's why my question to you is, what is the next big step to balance safety and competition?
So as I mentioned in the beginning, indeed, we understand the need to move to the roads and to move to commercialization. And this cannot wait years. So in that sense, as part of the Automotive Action Plan, we introduced this initiative to establish at least 3 large-scale cross-border test beds together with member states. And that's what we are currently working on. We are working at a quite fast pace, and the plan is to announce these test bed locations by the first quarter of next year. So of course, this will depend a lot on the member states because they will have to allow the vehicles on their territories under some simplified conditions. And this is an initiative that is focusing to strengthen the competitiveness of our European players. So we'll be focusing on internal resources.
Thank you so much. So a last quick final round. Your single most important lever to make an autonomous driving reality, to become reality, in 2 points. Only 2 points, please. Who would like to start? Marina.
Just 2 points. So my wish would be in 10 years to have that kind of reality by trusting in innovation and having role models for the advantages that can bring to us, to our life, and make our life easier, especially for the vulnerable groups.
Thank you. Christian?
Yeah, we formulated several demands. Focus on 2, standardized data set, as mentioned,
yes.
And for sure the idea of the driving license to make a common standard for everybody for homologation process.
As Allianz, we've proven in the past when the park distance control came out, we did that on the ACT area, I remember that. We've already supported building trust for consumers through new technology.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be very much progress through partnerships.
Partnerships, yes. To you?
For us, it's scalable markets for the common good, so we welcome the approach with the European test beds. And the second aspect for us is to have a strong European network, a strong European value chain in AI and autonomous vehicles. And there definitely we are looking forward to receive support and standards that adhere to the European values.
Thank you, Sasha. Maria Cristina, what's your point? 2 points. Maybe from your side, but also as on call to action to the nations and countries.
Well, so of course, I agree. Single market is one of the biggest European strengths. So we need single market for driving automation, and we need deployment with safety.
Thank you so much. We invite now Frank Sommerfeld and Lucy Bakker to join on stage because we will now open the floor to all your questions you have. First, we will start here with questions in the room, and then we switch to online questions. So just to let us know, who has questions here in the room? Is there anyone first, an icebreaker? Perfect. Please tell us to whom you would like to address the question to.
Yes, classical question. So to Mr. Sommerfeld, I suppose. What is your, do you already have possibilities to price autonomous functions in terms of your insurance options, and what do you see in the future if you have a totally autonomous car, so the price would be 0 for the customer?
So as we're probably shown in the presentation, we see that the advanced security system already have a huge impact on the frequency of claims. So in the parking example, 66% decrease. So that will definitely go into our pricing systems. Obviously, if the system is more advanced, the price will go down further than the ones that are not advanced. So the ones that don't have a rear emergency braking systems will probably stay at the same level, and the ones that have it and have the ones with a flank will go down 66%, and that's probably the same for every other security system that will go in there. Then if we are in 2060, we will probably look more towards a system-related pricing, so the human touch, like the mentality things, which is in the NCD, no claims discount SF-Klasse in Germany will probably be less relevant for the pricing, and the ones how sophisticated is the OEM's security system and the AI working will have a bigger impact on the pricing. So frequency will go down. We have seen that 50%. So price will, on the frequency level, will probably halve. But you have so many sensors and cameras in there. So if there's a crash, you can imagine that then the severity of a claim, so the average claim size will increase significantly. So that probably will not halve, but it will go down with more security and less frequency. But there will also be still hail, which is probably not, we don't have any AI preventing us from hail so far. There will be theft and other claim causes, other than accident, that will still have an impact, marten bites and things like that. So there will be claims left that we need to ensure once we have the vehicles.
We have an online question. Thank you so much. We have an online question for Verena Bentele. We have now heard about various use cases. Which is the most interesting for you and should be introduced the fastest and promoted the most?
I think one very big advantage is at the moment, for example, we don't have enough drivers sometimes for buses, for public transport systems. So perhaps the public sector would be a very interesting thing to start with the autonomous driving. That would be very interesting to me. And the question before was if it is a strength or a handicap in Europe to have that kind of a balancing between the regulation and the competition. And so for me, one very, very big strength it would be if we try on one sector to start with the autonomous driving. I know it's a very difficult thing to mention or to ask for that, because at the moment in a connected life, if not every car is connected to each other's, it would be very hard to start on one sector, but by the taxi issue or the public transport issue, finding a starting point, that would be a very interesting thing to me if we discuss more and more collecting data, but we have to find a starting point to make it more, perhaps to make it more giving people the chance to feel how it is to have the autonomous driving. And if people don't feel it, they cannot imagine that. And that's perhaps the starting point we have to concentrate on.
Thank you for your answer. We have a question to Christina Galassi. Is it right that in Europe it's only allowed to register up to 1,500 AVs per year per manufacturer as level 4? And if so, is that sufficient to promote a rapid development of this technology?
Well, for driverless use cases like shuttles, robotaxis, as was mentioned today, so what is covered currently by the EU text, yes, we do have this limitation. For automated lane keeping systems, for example, we do not have this limitation. We are, as I mentioned, we are working to remove this limitation in the number, and this will be done hopefully through the United Nations regulation that will be adopted in June 2026.
Thank you. Do we have more questions here? In the room over there, please.
My name is Tami Holderried. I'm from Handelsblatt. Question to you, Ms. Bakker. Can you give more detail on how you will be handling liability with these cases in the future? I think you mentioned to treat autonomous drivers as normal ones, but maybe can you make it a little more tangible for us?
Of course. I mean, theoretically, it's not a difference. No, you would have the same constellation as you have today with cars driving into each other or more than one party involved. So you will have to go into the details and see, you know, where the liability lies. However, with development of technology also surrounding the cars and in the cars, we will also see, and we already see this, that it's much better to do the reconstruction of the accident, no, and to really re-see what really happened. You have other witnesses by having the video storages, the sensors that give you all the data, what really happened. You have the automatic display of the speed of the car, of you know, who touched whom, etc., etc. So this is much easier for us. The Allianz Zentrum for Technik, for example, puts a lot of research in accident research, really how do these accidents happen, and then, of course, who's liable and who was causing the accident as well.
There was one more question here beside, please.
Thank you. I've got one question to Mr. Meyer. How is the ramp up of MOIA progressing? When are we going to see the first cars in Berlin? And what are the next milestones after that?
Thank you for the question. The first cars in Berlin are on the road since last week, Friday, or 2 weeks ago, Friday, where we launched our testing together with BVG, so the largest public transport operator in Germany. So overall, how are we progressing? Our main trajectory is towards the serial production of the ID. Bus vehicle. That for us is the most relevant goal. We will hit this milestone in 2027, and until then we need to be able to achieve the homologation in the European Union. That is pursued in 2026, end of 2026 to be accurate. For the testing purposes, we are testing in Hamburg, in Munich, and for winter testing in Oslo and now Berlin. Furthermore in Austin, Texas, and Los Angeles for the US market. We are extending our test fleet, and we want to achieve first commercial deployment in 2026 in the US and driverless deployment end of 2026 in the US as well.
One more question online to Christian Saar. In case of an accident, who will be responsible? The fleet operator or the OEM? As autonomous vehicles should drive safer than human driver, what are the anticipated insurance costs for a robocar in relation to a human-driven vehicle?
Okay, it's in addition to what Lucy and Frank said. Maybe from victim's point of view, that's the important thing. For the victim, nothing changes. And that's the important thing. We are insuring the vehicle, and so the victim is protected. That's the most important thing. And then after that, it will be more complex. So for insurance, everything changes, but for the customer, for the victim, not. That's the important thing. From insurance point, who is liable? Well, we don't know. That's exactly the point. And it will be more complex because it's not clear whether it's the automotive OEM or the sensors tier 1 supplier, or is it the AD stack delivered by another company, or is it the operator? So the technical supervision was their fault maybe. So it's really complicated, and we need to find out, and we need then again data to explore that. And that's what will change insurance a lot, because we need to build up even more competence to find that out and help in the end, for sure, the victim. But the victim is always protected.
Thank you so much. Any more questions here in the room?
Maybe to add on the cost question, because it also said, you know, how is the cost going to develop? As Frank said, we assume that it's going to be lower because of a decrease in frequency of accidents, and we said that it's 50%. But we will also have an increase because of the technology that is built in the car, so the cost of an accident is probably higher. But we assume that it's somewhere in the middle range between the 50 and the 100%.
There's a question to you, Frank Sommerfeld. Is it possible to say that the systems are already better than humans?
It's probably to leave that to the engineers. That. I don't think there's a fair test at the moment out there to really get up to that point. We have seen studies where you at least see that the number of disengagements or miles driven per disengagement in autonomous vehicles actually increased by the factor 50 that I mentioned earlier. Up to now, in 2022, it was about 60,000 miles without any disengagement. If you compare that to a human being, and if you say a disengagement always means an accident prevented, in the US in 2022, the study says it's 200,000 miles without an accident. And you probably say 2022, the the human being was still better. But I think it's not a like-for-like comparison, and it's already 3 years back, and technology evolves rapidly and exponentially, so it's very difficult. We have that from companies like Waymo saying 92% of injuries prevented. This is a self-declared analysis. It's also very difficult to actually take that into account. I haven't seen any current analytics about really like-for-like comparison. And I think it also depends on the situation. So in heavy rains at night, it's probably more difficult for an autonomous vehicle still, or dusk and dawn if the streets are wet. Also very, very difficult at the moment, but I think there's no clear definition, but maybe you have a different view on that.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not so sure. We had the opportunity with various OEMs, and I would say, Christian, even in the different weather conditions, they're doing specific technological tests now in the snow, etc., and there seems to be a large improvement here as well.
Yeah, it's a large improvement, and we expect also an exponential improvement because of change of technology from scenario-based validation to self-learning AI. So there's a difference then, and we will see that. But the proof is exactly what we need to do in test fields, because you cannot compare the human error on an accident with an incident of a vehicle, because an incident doesn't lead to an accident. So the comparison is not possible, so that's the reason we need to deploy, we need to test on real roads in these test fields, and we need to invest, especially in the private sector.
Thank you. Yeah, more question again here, and maybe also around the corner. I can't see it, but just tell me if there's one, please.
Just a quick follow-up, because you mentioned that you have to learn a lot and you have to build up more competence in this field. How are you doing that already? Because the development is so rapid. Are you keeping up?
I believe so, yes, because we are the first movers to be part of these test fields. It's kind of, if you discuss with various test fields, it's not always the fact that an insurer is involved that deeply as we are as Allianz, because we want to develop the vehicles itself. Within the development, there need to be changes in data acquisition and so on, which data need to be acquired and which will be exchanged. And within the test fields, we are collecting data, especially regarding specific accident types, where we see the most important claims from injuries, but also just claims like collisions and parking maneuvers and so on. So we are giving these information, which situations are the most relevant, and acquire data especially for those situations. So you can explicitly improve your vehicle based on what really matters.
There's one more question here to Sascha Meyer. Do you think that autonomous driving is only in connection with e-cars?
Yeah, obviously that's where the market is heading. So all the customer requests that we receive are specifically targeting BEVs, with one exception. We received calls from the GCC region where they wanted to have combustion engine cars for, I think obvious reason. There just doesn't make sense to use electricity because all their power is based on natural resources anyhow. So that's the only area where we received such calls from. But there's also technical reason, like all the systems, they definitely are based on electronic systems. You want to have the redundancy inside the vehicle to ensure that even if one powertrain fails or one power supply fails, then the vehicle can take over. So that obviously points everyone towards BEVs.
Thank you so much for your engagement. Thank you so much for all your questions. We will answer every question in written form, so don't hesitate to ask more. Also in the chat, we will store it. Everyone will get an answer. Thank you so much. Sascha Meyer, Maria Cristina Galassi, Susan Poyner, Frank Sommerfeld, Christian Saar, Verena Bentele und Luzi Backerfeld. A big applause to our experts here in the panel discussion.